The most important week of the year is here. It's the fantasy playoffs. You definitely don't want to make a mistake with your lineup this week. Now let's discuss. Beginning with J.K. Dobbins, who returned with a bang last week. The Ravens running back put up 120 yards, 20 fantasy points. He found the end zone, and boy, oh boy, did he produce. Now, you may have seen on Twitter this 40-yard run that he isn't able to take to the house. He looks banged up, a little bit gimpy, which is concerning for sure. But if you actually watched all of his other touches, he had burst, he had agility, and he looked good outside of that one long run. And now he faces the Browns' number 29 run defense. So all this is fantastic to start him, right? Well, yeah, except one big issue. Dobbins led the backfield in snaps, but he only played 46% of the snaps. And 4 running backs saw work in this game. 4, including Gus Edwards, who saw 13 carries in his own right, just 2 less than what Dobbins saw last week. And sure, Dobbins has missed time, so there's a good chance they can ramp up his snaps, but multiple running backs and a mobile QB will still be involved here. And Dobbins had no targets in his return last week. He only has 6 targets in 5 games this year, so really, he probably needs to find the end zone to pay off, if not once, but twice. So he's a great player off of a great game, but for this week, he's a sit. And then there's David Montgomery, who, man, he's a tricky call this week. You see, in 3 games so far this season without Khalil Herbert, he's averaging over 17 fantasy points and over 18 total touches, his receptions and rush attempts. He's literally scoring 83% more points per game without Herbert this last month of the year, averaging 100 yards per game. That's fantastic. But the bad news is he's a 9-point underdog against the Eagles this week, and when you're an underdog, usually you don't see as many rush attempts. But in 5 games this year, as a 7-point favorite or more, he's actually averaging over 14 fantasy points per game, and with his receptions, 2.4 per game, over 16 touches. And very quietly, the Eagles struggle. They're bottom 10 in tackling when Montgomery this season is 6th in broken tackles. And he has 4 or more targets in every game without Herbert, averaging over 2 red zone attempts per game the last 2 months of the year. So he has those cheat codes you want to start him. And you should also consider taking his over 53.5 rushing yards this week. I have him in the 60s on prizepicks.com. If you want to take it, there's a link in the description below. With that link, you'll get a free bet up to $100. All right, now let's slide into a team that's coming off of the bye with the Washington Commanders. Now I want to focus primarily on Brian Robinson. What do we do with this guy who has been splitting work all year long with Antonio Gibson? But now the rookie is coming off of the bye week, and historically, rookies see more usage once they have their bye. And if this ends up happening with Brian Robinson, that's great news because he's already seeing big usage. Before the bye week, 21 rush attempts, 2 receptions. That's a 23-touch game. And in that game, he went for over 100 total yards against the New York Giants, who this week, yet again, he faces the New York Giants. And that Giants team, yeah, they're bad against the run, as you can see by Robinson taking advantage of them. Before the bye week, they ranked 27th against the run. And now over his last 4 games, as he gets to the end of his rookie season and starts to see more usage, Robinson is averaging 20 rush attempts, a reception, and 13.5 fantasy points. I mean, this is easily top 15 running back production. So in a good matchup, healthier, coming off of the bye week, Robinson is a start. And now what about Jerick McKinnon, who led every single running back last week, including Christian McCaffrey, by scoring over 30 fantasy points. He ended up putting up 134 total yards and 2 touchdowns. He had a great day in the receiving department, catching 7 balls on 9 targets, and now he faces the number 31 ranked Texans run defense. But if you watch this game, you know it was kind of fluky production. We can look at this play right here. Mahomes escapes the pocket, and then McKinnon is basically just left wide open. He goes for a 50-plus yard touchdown. It's smart, right? It's smart on his part. To understand and be aware from the veteran out there is great, but we can all agree that was kind of a fluky play for half of his production. Now, the 9 targets that he saw in that game, we cannot underestimate those. That's great usage for any player, let alone a running back, but the Chiefs are 14-point favorites this week, so how much are they going to actually be checking it down to the running back, especially later in the game? My projection and guess is not all that much, meaning McKinnon, who only had 6 carries last week, it won't be that useful, nowhere near as useful as last week. He's a sit. Then there's the Packers running back, A.J. Dillon, who's coming off of the bye week, and before the bye week, man, this guy started to heat up. He had his 2 best fantasy days back-to-back weeks, 17.8 points and 21 points. Was basically a top 12 running back in each of those games. He had 11 and 21 touches. But there's an issue here. His week 13 usage right before the bye week, when he put up 21 points on 21 touches, yeah, the problem was Aaron Jones was hurt and didn't play in the second half because the team knew they were going on bye, so they didn't want to push him. And Dillon played the Bears run defense that ranks dead last, 32nd in the NFL in that game. It's good that he took advantage of them, but it won't be the same this week. Because this week, Dillon faces the Rams' #1 run defense. Expect somewhere between 10 and 12 carries out of Dillon, who is still the running back 2 behind Aaron Jones. And that makes AJ on Monday Night Football a sit for week 15. And another veteran is the almost birthday boy, Latavius Murray, who is going to be turning 33 years old this past week. His back bad season, his inefficient season continued. 11 touches go for just 31 total yards. And now on the year, he ranks 60th in true yards per carry, 49th in yards per touch. Pretty much this just means he's extremely inefficient. Two running backs that have been more efficient than him on a per touch basis, Matt Breida and Snoop Connor. Yes. However, Murray has been a decent flex option for many people, topping 10 fantasy points in 5 of 7 games, mainly due to a lack of competition. You see, there's Chase Edmonds who got put on IR, there's Melvin Gordon who got cut, and Mike Boone who returned and looked really good and was looking explosive and dynamic. He just got put on IR. So yet again, Murray has no competition. With Mike Boone on IR, the only other competition is Marlon Mack, who is not seeing any touches in past weeks when he was the backup to Latavius Murray. So Murray, who should now see 15 plus touches as a favorite versus the Cardinals' number 28 run defense, yeah, just by default this week, he's actually a start. Now let's discuss Najee Harris, who very quietly over the last month of the season has been good. Najee is averaging 15.4 fantasy points on over 16 touches, almost 17 touches per game when you factor in his receptions. Now this is strong usage for Najee, but it is skewed because the rookie Jaylen Warren has been hurt, and let's break it down. In week 11, he saw just 4% of the snaps because he was hurt. In week 12, he missed a game, and then in week 13, he returns and plays just 19% of the snaps. There's no coincidence Najee has had his best 3-game stretch when Jaylen Warren was banged up or not playing. And reminder, before getting hurt, Warren was picking up steam, playing a season-high 43% of the snaps, going for over 70 total yards and 11 fantasy points. Mike Tomlin said, yeah, this usage is going to continue for Warren. And what happens in his first healthy game now? He plays 40% of the snaps, stealing work away from Najee. Now, there's two major concerns for Najee. The first one is his efficiency is not even there at all. He's 48th in yards per touch compared to Jaylen Warren, the rookie, who's top 10. And then the second issue is his routes. He's ran 4, 9, and 10 routes the last 3 weeks. That's 23 total routes in 3 games. Last year, he was averaging 25 routes run per game. So he's not seeing efficiency, he's losing work, and he's not seeing targets, which was the reason why he was a first-round pick for a lot of you in your season-long drafts. This week, Najee Harris in week 15, as he continues to lose snaps to Jaylen Warren, is a sit. And I've taken him under 60.5 rushing yards on prizepicks.com. Again, you can take that with the link in the description below. You'll get a free bet matched up to $100. Use it or lose it. Check it out. Okay, so we head from Najee to this next NFC backfield, and it's kind of confusing. What in the world do we do with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers running backs this week? It's pretty tricky, so let's dive in. Last week, it was Rachaad White who led the backfield with 13 carries compared to just Leonard Fournette seeing 4. However, we got to go deeper here because these are the snaps. Rachaad White played 40 to Leonard Fournette's 36, and Leonard Fournette continued to play on third downs and in the 2-minute drill. So this was technically still a split backfield in usage where Rachaad White is seeing the early down carries and Leonard Fournette is seeing the passing down usage. And then if we get into their efficiency, Rachaad White ranks 40th in yards per touch, Leonard Fournette 42nd. So neither of them have been all that dynamic or explosive or good. And now the Bucs have just a 20-point team total, one of the lowest on the week, versus a top 10 tackling unit in Cincinnati. So you're getting two inefficient running backs that are taking a lot of work from each other in a difficult matchup. They are both sits for me. Now this is really surprising to me. The Panthers are a rare favorite this week, 2.5-point favorites versus Pittsburgh. And that's great news for D'Onta Foreman because in 5 close games this year, he averages 23.6 touches. I mean, that's top 3 running back usage and over 110 yards per game. Now you might be saying, yeah, but Sal, what about Chuba Hubbard, who looked way better last week? Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Chuba Hubbard had a good game. 17 touches. He goes for 99 total yards, 19 fantasy points. He looked great. But the actual usage didn't change all that much. D'Onta Foreman continued to play around 50% of the snaps, 11 more snaps than Chuba Hubbard. It was just Hubbard who had a good game. He was efficient and found the end zone. Now, maybe Hubbard has another good game, but I'm not going to ignore the fact that Foreman has continued to put out there as the RB1, especially when the game's close, seeing 20-plus touches, and now they're favorites. So you can start both of these guys, but I prefer D'Onta Foreman here. He is a start. We talked about one Kansas City running back, but what about the other one in the rookie, the 7th-round rookie Isaiah Pacheco, who, yes, he was outshined, like we said last week, from Jerick McKinnon, who played a second highest snap count of the year, 57% of the snaps, and dropped over 30 fantasy points. Now, none of that is great news for Isaiah Pacheco, but Pacheco still earned 16 touches, a season-high 3 catches very quietly in the receiving game is great to see, and he went for 93 yards. He's now topped 80 total yards in 5 straight games. And now he enters his best matchup of the year as a 14-point favorite versus the Texans' number 31 ranked run defense. You see, the Texans have allowed the most yards to running backs this year, over 1,800 yards, 150 more than any other team. So as such a big favorite, especially in the second half, expect more work for Pacheco. We're looking at 15 to 20 touches, another 80-plus yards, and a start for Isaiah this week. We go from a rookie to a third-year running back in DeAndre Swift, who, look, after week 13 a couple weeks ago, we were all encouraged. It was great, the most usage since week 1 as he was finally getting healthier. 18 total touches, over 20 fantasy points. He finds the end zone. He goes for 100 total yards. Swift finally led the Lions backfield more than Jamal Williams with 51% of the snaps snaps in week 13 and was set up well to smash in a good matchup versus the Vikings. And indeed, a lot of points were scored in that matchup. 57 total points to be exact, but Swift didn't deliver. Swift saw his snaps drop. He played just 25 of 70 total snaps out of nowhere. That's just 34% of the snaps, and it only led to 9 touches. And as you can see in this game, 3 different running backs, William Swift and Justin Jackson, the former Charger, saw 20 or more snaps. That's 28% of the snaps or more. It was a mess in this backfield. So this was gross to see in such a good game environment, and now it's a worse game environment versus a top 5 run defense in the New York Jets. Swift this week and all these Lion running backs are a sit. But on the opposite side of this game, we get Zonovan Knight, who last week saw less snaps than Michael Carter. This is not great news, but did it matter? The quick and dirty answer is no, because he still saw 19 touches, still found the end zone, and he looked good out there overall, producing 77 yards, including a 13-yard touchdown. Compared to Michael Carter, who had 8 touches and produced just 20 yards, they want this guy Zonovan Knight, who is second in the NFL in broken tackles his last and only 3 games of the year. And across those 3 games, he's averaging 15.3 fantasy points on nearly 19 touches per game. They've been saying they want a guy who can just break tackles and go downhill, and that's what this guy provides. Now, this week, he faces the Lions defense, who on the season ranked 23rd in run defense, but we have to break this down more. As you can see from my tweet, the Lions defense the last month of the season has been fantastic, holding guys like Saquon Barkley to just 22 yards, Travis Etienne to 54, and Dalvin Cook last week to 23 rushing yards. Now, this is kind of scary for Zonovan Knight, but he's been playing fantastic. The number 2 graded running back, only behind Miles Sanders the last month of the season from Pro Football Focus, ahead of all those other names we just mentioned. And the Jets are using him not only in the red zone, but the passing game over Michael Carter at times, so he has different outs to his game, making him a start this week. I'm also taking him over 54.5 rushing yards, as I have him projected for about 65 rushing yards. Again, this is the time to get a free bet on Prize Picks. You can join the thousands of other people who have taken advantage of this offer with the link in the description below to go to Prize Picks. You use the code SAL22. That's SAL22. And on your first deposit, they'll double it. They'll 2x it up to $100. You put in 27 bucks, you get 27 back. You put in 50, you get 50 back. If you put in 100, you get 100 right back with the link in the description below. All right, now there's Travis Etienne, who, boy, oh boy, has he been disappointing in 6 weeks now. It's been 6 weeks. He has not had a quality game. Now, right before that, he was popping off for 25 plus points a week, but the problem is it hasn't happened in a while. Now let's break down this disappointing stretch. It all started in week 10 in a game that was a blowout. He got pulled in the 4th quarter. He didn't see a lot of usage because they're trailing by multiple scores to Kansas City. Okay, fine. Then he goes on bye in week 11, and in week 12 only plays 10% of the snaps before getting hurt. As we keep going here, in week 13, he plays that improving in quality Detroit run defense as of late, and he does not produce all that much, but he plays 88% of the snaps. He then plays Tennessee's number 2 ranked run defense last week, plays 74% of the snaps, sees his most usage since week 9 with 17 touches. As you can see right here, 17 carries, 4 red zone touches, but he doesn't produce. He just puts up 7 points. So it's been blowouts, injuries, and tough matchups for DeAndre Swift, but that might all be about to change. Because this week he faces the Cowboys, who they have like an average run defense. If you factor in the tackling, around league average, just run defense, though, 21st in the NFL. And the Jaguars are surprisingly only 4-point underdogs at home to the Cowboys. So for a running back playing around 75 to 80% of the snaps, might see close to 20 touches in this one, and a quality matchup, yeah, you gotta start him. And consider taking him over 51.5 rushing yards. I have him projected for over 70 rushing yards. We saved the best prop for last in this video. Etienne's prop is my favorite. I got it on prizepicks.com, and you can too with that free bet in the link in the description below. So these are the running backs that you have to start and sit, and you don't want to mess this up, especially in the first week of the fantasy playoffs. Now, there also might be some players on your waiver wire still to this point, whether it's a defense, whether it's a running back or receiver, a fill-in tight end, a league-winning rookie tight end, that you can add and play right now. To see exactly who those players are that you want to have to improve your team, well, check out this lovely video right here.